Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to remind you to remember about the attendance register. So without further ado, let's get started with today's lesson. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. Today is lesson 35. It's about literal versus figurative language. And I'm Mrs. Swart. I'll be taking you through the lesson. And I want you to remember that all of this is to enrich you and to help you. And you're going to find that sometimes you say things literally, and sometimes they also have a figurative meaning. So, what is the difference between the two? Literal language is exactly what the words say. That would be the grass is always greener on the other side. And when you look at this picture, you can see that's exactly what it is. On the one side, it's all dull, like it is in the winter. And on the right side, it's green. And if this was something that was happening generally or occurring all the time, then it would be that the grass is always greener on the other side. That's literally. Figuratively, it would have a different meaning. You might say, oh, I want to go to that school. And then your mom or teacher would say, just remember, the grass is always greener on the other side, or it always looks greener on the other side, meaning that things appear to be better on the other side. So you see the exact meaning compared to the figurative meaning, where there's a little bit of a difference in the meaning. Literal is actual meaning. It's the exact words that are said. And figurative would be a different meaning or another meaning. It would also be to emphasize or accentuate something, and it's often through something called hyperbole. Now, what is hyperbole? It's exaggeration. You say, oh, that boy is as big as a house. You're exaggerating, but you are also using other figures of speech to describe it. We often do it. Your mother would say to you, I've told you 1,000,000 times. Isn't that exaggeration? She hasn't told you 1,000,000 times, but she's trying to say or accentuate just how often she has said something to you. I want you to remember at the end of this lesson, you are going to get examples that you have to identify. You will get statements or sentences, and you are going to have to say whether they are literal. So you'll have to look at what it says and decide, is this exactly what it says? The words that they are, maybe it could have a slightly different meaning, but the words that they are, is that exactly what it means according to the dictionary? Or could it have a different meaning? Or else there are some that could possibly have more than one meaning. There could be a literal meaning and there could be a figurative meaning. So when you look at the sentences in the quiz, read them carefully and ask yourself, does this make sense? Can I take this literally? Can I accept this means exactly what it says? Or does it have a different meaning? Now, literal versus figurative. You'll remember in lesson 25, we touched on figurative language. We did the figures of speech in the lesson on advertisements. So you can go back there and you can go and have a look at that again to see what the figures of speech were. They were part of the advertising techniques. But when we look at our literal language, the words mean exactly what they say. Your figurative language, there are comparisons that are used, and it could accentuate or exaggerate what you're trying to say, or there could be a totally different meaning to what your sentence says. So it could be, let's call it a hidden meaning. In most cases, there are two possible meanings. So you could have a literal and a figurative, or a literal or figurative meaning, and you have to be able to identify that. When you read a text, a comprehension, you will be able to identify whether the writer wants you to understand it literally or figuratively. So you could read the whole text, the whole passage, and afterwards you'll realize the writer was trying to bring across a different meaning. They might use a totally different image than what you would expect, or you would think it might be about say, passage about a boxer, but it's not necessarily about the boxer. It could be about anything like this fighting in the world, and this person, the boxer, then wants to make peace, but it could be that he symbolizes the world that wants to be at peace. So you see, there are quite a few tricks in it that you could find. Now, figures of speech that we look at, things like a simile, and that, you know, is a comparison using like or as. We would say, he is like a lion in battle. We are comparing him to a lion that is fighting. In a metaphor, we could say exactly the same thing, but we'd have to say it a little bit differently because we still want to say he is like a lion in battle, but because it's a metaphor, we're describing something by saying it is something else. So with a simile, we say he is like a lion in battle. Metaphor, we're going to say he is a lion in battle. That's how easy it is to know the differences. Remember, simile is a comparison using like or as. Don't get mixed up and think anything with like or as is a comparison or is a simile. It has to be a comparison using like or as. Some more personification. It's also a figure of speech you need to know when you give something human characteristics. You see the fat cat sitting there. The chair groaned under my weight. So the chair has been given human characteristics, or you could say characteristics as if it was a person. Personification as if it's a person. Hyperbole we've looked at already, at exaggeration. We say she is as old as the hills, and there at bottom right you can see how old she is. But it's also a simile. So you'll see that sometimes there's more than one example in the sentence or the poem, for instance. And then onomatopoeia, that is comes from a Greek word. It's also known as a sound device. The imitation of sound, for instance, the snake slithered stealthily across the path. We have that sound of the snake. Alliteration, it's also sound device, and so is assonance. It's repetition of the initial consonant. A bevy of bad boys walked in. You will notice that the B's do not have to follow every single word. There can be words in between, but they're close together. So the bevy of bad boys. The assonance is repetition of the vowel sound. Why say the vowel sound? You could have I, this I, and I has the same sound. So remember, it's not necessarily going to be spelled the same. The captain had his cat on his lap. We have the repetition of the A sound there. Let's quickly look at this. We couldn't play outside because it was raining very hard. That is literally. We couldn't play outside because it was raining cats and dogs. Can it rain cats and dogs? No, it can't. But this is hyperbole, it's exaggeration. It's trying to show you how heavily it is raining. The picture on the left is where you see it's raining cats and dogs, and the one on the right is literal. The one on the left is figurative. Let's quickly look at these pictures before we get to the quiz. I'm very excited to see you do the quiz. I know you're going to get it right. You cannot have a green thumb unless you have gangrene, and that would be horrible. But you see, a green thumb is associated with someone who can get plants to grow. At the bottom left, we have the boxer, and you can throw in the towel figuratively, like they do in boxing. They throw in the towel, or if you give up, you have also thrown in the towel. Then the cat has his tongue. Does the cat have your tongue? Your tongue? Does the cat have your tongue? Are you scared to speak, or are you keeping quiet because you don't want to say anything? Then we say the cat has your tongue. See, he can't speak, the cat has his tongue. You can cry over spilt milk. You can really cry if you drop the milk bottle. You can sit and cry over the spilt milk because you have to clean it up. But if you cry over spilt milk, you actually unhappy or complaining about something that's gone wrong. And then at the bottom, the two men playing cards. You must play your cards right. It could be literal or figurative, because if they're playing their cards right, they're going to win. But if they play their cards right, if you play your cards right, in your grade and you work hard, you're going to pass. So that means if you work hard, if you apply what you're learning, then you will do well and you'll pass. Then you are playing your cards right. Now, practice makes perfect. We all know that. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go to the quiz. I just want to check that this is moving on. There we go. You'll see that there is a link for you. You're going to use this link and you're going to complete the quiz that you can see if you know the difference between literal and figurative, or if both of them are there. If you can use it as literal or figurative, then it means you can use it for both. Then you will have to click on both. Otherwise, you might miss something. But look very carefully at the sentences. It's actually very easy. Yeah, we look at your QR code. I'd like you to make sure that you apply this. We will share this in the group as well, so that you can get to your quiz and you can complete your quiz. So what I'd like to say to you is good luck with your quiz and have a wonderful day, and keep on working hard, because I know that you will do well. Thank you.